Alan Quinlan, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, lads. How are you?
The Limerick Leader are confidently predicting that Graham Rowntree has been given the job. They're reporting that this morning. Are you hearing something similar?
I am, yeah. Obviously, it's not confirmed, and I can't confirm it, but that's what I'm hearing. Um, and I think it's a good appointment. I think some people would possibly want a bigger name with respect to Graham. Coming from a head coach role in another top job or an international coach or something like that. But I think the most important thing, Jared, here is I think it's a good call if Graham Rowntree gets it, because I think they need some consistency as regards knowing the players, knowing the problems, and trying to address them, knowing the culture, the little things about players' habits, all that kind of stuff. Who works hard, who needs to be G'd up a little bit more, how to motivate the group. Um, I think the most important thing here is if he gets the job, is then who his assistant coaches are going to be, and changing the game plan for me, because we got big names the last time, didn't we? We got a big forwards coach in Rowntree. We got a big name in Stephen Larkham. Johan van Gran kind of came from nowhere really as regards getting the head coach job. So I think the most important thing. So I would, if there is Munster fans out there who think, oh God, why haven't we got a Scott Robertson, or why haven't we got a Vern Cotter or some big name? I think this is a good appointment, a really good appointment, because he's right at the coalface and he deserves an opportunity. But I think the really important key here is assistant coaches,
Is there
upskilling the players.
any whisper of who that's going to be?
I don't know. Well, Mike Prendergast, who I'd be close to, was being linked for a period of time. Mike has been in France for 9 years, and I think I've said this openly before, that he's very well respected and liked for the teams he's been involved with in France. As regards his attack, Racing are flying again, and obviously they have a big squad. But I think what he did in Iona was really impressive, and Grenoble as well. And Bernard Jackman openly speaks about that as well. So look, from an attack point of view, that's the most obvious change that this team needs, and that's not just first phase or second phase. I think it's shape, overall skill set, decision making, and we saw that again on Saturday. The deficiency around decision making under pressure, very obvious decisions when Exeter were down to 13 men. Simple hand catch pass stuff. Very obvious one, the Ben Healy pass over the top to Shane Daly, then Craig Casey going himself. If he scores, you say right decision, but it was the wrong decision because he didn't score. But there was another one just before that, where Mike Haley just had to put it through the hands. Munster had about a 3-on-1 and he cut back inside. So just game management and all that kind of stuff, and making good decisions. I think so. The really important ones, and I think, look, JP Ferreira is gone as well. So what Munster really, really need, and this is just my opinion, is someone to inspire this group, to give them confidence. So a lot of defence coaches I've worked with over the years, they can come in and they can give a real lift to the group regarding, obviously their work rate is very good, this group, and their desire is there, and they're trying to get stuck in, and they're not lacking in that department. But just inspiring them to, with the ball, without the ball, getting up off the ground, and so they need a massive lift, really. So I think the assistant coaches, trying to gel them together, and I know it's going to be hard to get a Stuart Lancaster type scenario, coach of that quality. Maybe they will. I don't know, but I think that's really the key for me is the assistant coaches and the way they're playing.
Is there a sense within Munster at all, Alan, and this isn't necessarily in the near future, but over the next little while, that some of the coaches that they've let go do come back, the likes of Jerry Flannery and Felix Jones in particular? Now that the dust has settled a little bit, there's another change in the coaching ticket. Are conversations around those two individuals in particular arising once again at all?
I don't know, Owen. I think with Felix and Jerry, obviously it's pretty recent since they've left. Both have been doing really well, so I doubt if that will happen. I'm sure they will interest them. if those coaches were available or interested. But who knows, if Graham Rowntree gets it, he's got to select his own coaches, and see who he knows in the game and who he thinks will fit the job. I think he will understand the frustration out there. He can hear the mood music. He can hear the noise from the fans. He can see the frustration himself. And I think they have to change their whole approach, maybe to the media, to the public, to the way they speak to the fans, to the messages that are coming out, because it seems, and again, this is something that I feel is the situation, that they don't often get the noise and the music, the mood music that's out there. I know a lot of teams and a lot of sporting organisations, you kind of have to, rally the troops, be resilient and block out some of the unfair criticism. But I think it's gone on too long now. You have to understand that there's a frustration there that is blatantly obvious to see, and it's been going on for a long time now. We've seen green shoots, if you like, of some performances in the last number of years, but the same thing has been said over and over. When you get to the business end of the season, it's coming down to structure and game plan. Look, to be fair, there's also a frustration maybe after the weekend that, like, they did show incredible heart. They did show incredible desire and effort and work rate. Just look at Keith Earl's tackle, some of the defending on the line. I think Exeter were in their 22 double digits and scored 2 tries. But the effort and all that, people are getting sick of that. They want more than just effort. They want to see, good decisions and the team having a real cut and a go and then taking their opportunities. Nobody expects them to be at the level of right at the top table, but the fans want to see progression. So I think there's a number of things that have to change, and I think that's the challenge for the new head coach. Build on the good young players, the positive, and some of the current players who I believe you can get more out of. And they're very, very stifled and stiff in the way they play at times. And when you go into big games that you have to win against the top teams, you've got to find a way to unlock defences and not rely on brute force. And so, going back to your original question on, I don't know, could you see Jerry Flannery leaving Quins at the moment when they're, he moved his family over to London, probably left in disappointing circumstances, and Felix as well, who's probably eyeing being part of a Springbok squad going to a World Cup next year. So I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that ship has sailed for now for them, but certainly in the future you'd love to see them getting back. And it's interesting how well they've done once they've got out of the system. It's not like they were, overachieving being in the jobs they were in Munster. It's clear that both of them have massive futures, and hopefully massive futures involved in Irish rugby at some level. So the performance then, there was, as Andy Dunn said, a mix of old and some new, and that sense that I think that one of the frustrations that Munster fans had was that the young players weren't getting a fair crack at the whip recently, but every time they do, they play really well. And actually that's why it must be quite exciting at one level, that there is a vein of talent coming through, and it seems like the pipes are finally being switched on and that Munster are finally beginning to produce their own players.
Yeah, well, we've spoken a lot, Ger, about the core, a young group of players that have been kind of shown sticking their heads above water for probably 2 seasons now. Thomas Ahern is someone I think has the ability to go right to the top in this game. For various different reasons, he hasn't been able to consistently get up to that speed and that level. You saw Ryan Baird, the way he broke through with Leinster and Ireland. Thomas Ahern was kind of in a similar situation, but broke down a few times with injuries, probably had to learn a little bit more, was a bit raw. Some guys develop a little bit later in the game. He's a phenomenal talent. John Hodnett, for me, who had a long time out with injury, he only came back probably in the autumn. And I think he's someone who, 3 turnovers in a game like that against a top English side away from home, was right at the coalface all the way through the game. Even Jack O'Sullivan coming off the bench, who has picked up a few injuries of late. His impact off the bench was brilliant as well. So, yeah, there is some positivity there, I think, as regards to young players, and you've got to hang on to that. You have no choice but to try and bring them through, and that's something that has to happen, and you've got to build on that. You cannot just, I've said this many times, you cannot just produce a complete new front row of international standard. It's something, props are hard to come by. And that's an area where they need more depth and some of the players to come through. Kenyon Knox, Roman Salanoa, I think they're players that have to actually step up next year. If they're good enough, they have to go there and make that step up. They have the potential to do that. So, and I think, look, it's hard to keep focusing and kind of trying to fool people by this, but this is a reality. They have some very good young players who need opportunities. Chris Cloete played against Leinster. I was asking the question, where's John Hodnett? Chris Cloete is leaving at the end of the year. You're probably going to lose the game anyway against a very good Leinster side. The hope was that Munster would obviously win it, but John Hodnett needs these type of games. He needs to learn on the run. His game isn't perfect. And that's what has to happen. So, look, if they get everybody in the field, Ger, we know this, and this is the reality. If they had everyone on the field, they're in a much stronger position. The amount of players they were missing, and two players, Zebo and Dermot Barron, pulling out with illness as well before the game, does not help them. They need more squad depth.
Okay. What level of chance do you give them of going through?
It's one of those ones where you think, in previous years, I think that's a brilliant job. That's a great job to keep it to within 5 and possibly have won the game. But when you look back at the game and you analyse the amount of pressure they were under, you just cannot absorb that sort of pressure. They broke under that pressure the previous week against Leinster in the second half. But I think Exeter aren't as clinical and as dangerous a side as Leinster, so they couldn't punish them on that. And Munster were probably better defensively. They made some better reads in defence and put Exeter under a lot of pressure. So you think 5 points is a good thing, but I'd still be very, very cautious about when Rob Baxter and his side look at the game. They're still going to come with the same force, ferocity, set piece, pressure, ball carrying ability. And if they ask the same questions this week, it's going to be very, very difficult for Munster to keep them out. So I think it's going to be a tight game, and certainly there will be a huge fight. And I think Carberry and O'Mahony, if they come back, will help the situation. So it's still a very, very difficult situation for Munster, and they have a chance, but I wouldn't be saying they're roaring certainties to win this game, which is something we would have said in previous years.
Let's talk about Ulster and their win in Toulouse. Obviously helped with the red card after 12, 13 minutes. At the same time, they still had to then go and take on a baying home crowd who were trying to get at the referee and who didn't manage to. And they had to take their chances as well. It's like a classic smash and grab away from home performance that they nearly lost at the end, which we've seen them do a little bit over the course of the season, where they've been winning games and then for whatever reason a couple of tries late on has cost them a couple of times in Europe so far, and they got away with one as well against Northampton. So it's in them to have these roller coaster games. What are they going to take, and how confident will they feel for the return leg?
I think mentally, Ger, is the key. So many times in the last number of years we've seen these kind of performances from Ulster, and then a drop off and a vulnerability or a mental weakness, if you like. I thought they showed incredible resilience to get this, to win this game, because even with the sending off, they were 13-7 down at half time. So it wasn't a case of Juan Cruz Malia was sent off after 7 or 8 minutes and that it was one-way traffic. They were still under a lot of pressure. Toulouse went and scored again after that and took the lead. The strength and depth that they have is phenomenal. So I thought mentally, the way they were able to cope and stay calm and believe in themselves. And, they had an incredible win in Clermont earlier in the season. So those kind of experiences make you a better team and take you to the next level when you get to knockout rugby at this level. So, I thought the fight, and look, Dwayne Vermeulen was signed by Ulster as a 35-year-old for these types of games. And I just think his presence on the field is making a huge difference to this team. And the real key for me is that mental side of it, Jerry. He might not be the standout player every week, but his presence, his physicality. I thought Treadwell was brilliant as well for him. And I'd be really optimistic and positive about where he's going. He's improved his game, become much more physical. And then, of course, Balakoon. What a star. I just think this guy has that X factor. He's big, he's physical, and he's incredibly quick. So they become tougher. They become a tougher side. You go back in January when Munster were reduced to 14 men, and they were dreadful in Limerick in that second half. They tried to kick the ball away and contain Munster, and Munster punished them and won the game in the end. They kept playing was the most important thing here, and hanging on for dear life at the end. But that's a big result. That's a really, really big result that puts them, in my opinion, into the quarterfinals.
Right. You think they're going to see this through?
I think they'll beat Toulouse in Belfast. It'll be very tight, and look, Toulouse are a very dangerous side. But I just think that win, they're not chasing a score now, which can be a little bit dangerous because they're a type of side that are better when they're taking chances and moving the ball a little bit. Because I'd be concerned about their game management. When they play with ball in hand, they're a very dangerous side, and that's when they're really hard to beat. So I think that's what they've got to do on Friday night.
Okay, that brings us nicely to the final game of the weekend that we need to talk about from an Ireland perspective. Do Connacht still have a chance?
You'd like to think so, but it's still going to be a really, really tall order. I think they'll take a fair bit out of the ability to dig deep themselves and the way they reacted in the game. I thought the Bunbiaki chat at the end was significant. I don't know if you saw it. Connacht were in a huddle, and he was speaking to his players and his team, and you could see that there was something in their faces that really believed that they can go to Dublin and mix it with Leinster. You've got to get everything right in a game like this, and I think from the EPCR's point of view, there was a perfect scenario, and from Leinster's point of view, because there'll be real intrigue. The game isn't over. They scored early in the game, John Porsche, and that gave them a lift, and they were ferocious. Can they do the same again? Like I said, a tall order, but I think they'll be very dangerous. Leinster would be very, very silly to underestimate Connacht when they get going. I don't think they will, but look, you have to think Leinster are just too strong, and will probably be a bit frustrated that they were sloppy at times. They had Connacht on the rack near the end of the game, could have scored a couple of tries, but I thought it was a great reaction, wasn't it, out of Connacht?
Should it have been a red card?
I wasn't definite on it, and I'm pretty hard on a lot of these tackles. I just don't think he put any force going forward, and the referee said he accepted the tackle. By the letter of the law, it should have been a red card, but I just don't think there was a lot of mitigation there, which brought it down to the yellow, and I think it was probably right, the yellow card.
It's funny because in commentary it seemed like they were straight away saying this is red, it's red, and the referee talked himself into yellow straight away, and then nearly talked himself back into red, and decided in the end he was going to go with his instincts. Andy Friend says fine. The referees and the papers are saying red, and I guess ultimately, if you're going to make the decision that we're trying to change habits so that accepting the tackle or not, he would be lower, then it has to be red to condition people to say you can't tackle your head up, even if you're a little guy and he's a little guy.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and it's factual. I just think it's very difficult for Gibson Park to go in a crouch position there when Kieran Marmion was being tackled. It's a hard one. And it tells its own story that we're having so much debate about it. Some of these are pretty pretty obvious reds. I just think it's really, really. The one thing I always look for in these tackles is that forward movement. And there was none of that out of Gibson Park. So it was a situation where Kieran Marmion came into him.
Yeah.
There is shoulder into the face. And I think it's the only reason. Look, if it was one of your players, if it was your son playing a match, you wouldn't be going up after the game to Gibson Park saying, why the hell did you do that? That was really dangerous what you did. You know, it's kind of one of those ones. So I don't totally disagree with the people who are saying red, but I just feel it was just below the red card scenario. It could have been significant, and he would be a loss from because he'd probably be out this week. But I think it was probably just about right.
All right. Alan, good stuff. Thanks very much for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Cheers, lads. Thanks.
The 2 legs definitely works. We agree with that.
I guess we'll know next week with regards to some of the comebacks that are probably going to happen over the course of the weekend. But certainly, if you're looking at it from the 3 games involving the Irish teams, you're pretty excited for all 3 of the games.
Yeah, and the back-to-back was always a very interesting week, and it was a good idea in terms of the concept, and it certainly it provoked rivalries. But is there room in the extended season for it? I don't know, because this is the only part of the competition where it happens.
Yeah.
Would a final where it really work very well? 2-legged final?
Yeah, but possibly.
You're going to have 2 very good teams.
Yeah, and I guess you have got a couple of blowouts in the final, but chances are it's the round where it's least likely to happen. It does. I don't know. 2-legged finals. I like the occasion of a grand final. Like the semi-finals maybe might be the time to do it.
The UEFA Cup 2-legged finals used to be brilliant.
What was the last one?
I can't actually remember. Yeah. Is it around the same time as the Champions League gets born? So mid-90s?
Right.
Is that when it stops?
Probably. I don't have any recollection of it, to be honest.